At Thanksgiving, my sister discovered I had $12 million, and my family insisted I give it to her, saying she deserved it more. Hello everyone, before we start today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing popularity, and subscribing is one of the most effective ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and allows us to keep bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel developing together. Thank you very much. Now let us begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain details changed to maintain identity. So my name is Sarah, I'm 38, female, and I need to get this off my chest. Do you know those family dynamics in which one child does nothing wrong, and the other appears to be invisible? Yes, welcome to my life. Until I was 8, everything was typical. I was an only child, and while my parents were not very affectionate, they were present. Mom would help me with my studies, while Dad would occasionally take me fishing on Lake St. Clair. We weren't the Brady Bunch, but we were okay. Then came a night that changed everything. I recall my Aunt Kelly arriving at 2 a.m. and instructed me to prepare a suitcase because Mom was in the hospital. My sister Rachel was on her way, but something was wrong. She wasn't supposed to arrive for another 2 months. The following few weeks were filled with hospital visits and quiet conversations. Rachel was really small. She resembled one of my baby dolls, but with all the tubes and cords. I was not permitted to touch her or get too close. That was the first time I sensed an invisible barrier building between myself and the rest of my family. When they finally brought Rachel home, our house transformed into a sanitized bubble. Mom was obsessed with germs. I'm talking about industrial-strength disinfection throughout, hand sanitizer stations in each room, and continuous cleaning. The unpleasant odor of bleach still bothers me to this day. But here's what really messed me up. If I showed the smallest sign of illness, I was whisked away to either Grandma Marie's or Aunt Kelly's home. I mean, every time. Sneeze once? Pack your bags. A slight cough? You're going to see Grandma. At first I found it enjoyable. Grandma Marie would bake cookies, and Aunt Kelly had a beautiful collection of Nancy Drew books that I was working my way through. But kids aren't stupid. After a while you start to realize what's going on. You are not being sent on adventures. You are being treated as a threat. As if your entire life could harm your darling sister. I tried everything to get their attention in a healthy way. Seriously, everything. Got all A's? Mom would barely look up from Rachel's most recent doctor's appointment schedule. Won first place in the scientific fair with a project about renewable energy. Dad just asked if I could keep the display board in the garage because Rachel is allergic to cardboard dust. Is this actually a thing? The real kicker came when I was 12. For months I'd been studying for the school talent show, teaching myself to play Bridge Over Troubled Water on piano. I understand it's a little too blatant. Rachel developed a fever of 99.1 degrees Fahrenheit on the night of the show. Guess who didn't have anyone in the audience? Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, Rachel's entire family, including both sets of grandparents, watched her 15-minute flute recital, during which she nailed hot cross buns. Rachel quickly learned how to operate the system. By the age of 7, she had outgrown any serious health issues, but that did not prevent her from performing. Headache? Must stay home from school. Feeling tired? Someone else, guess who, should complete her chores. Worried about a test? Mom would literally contact the school to have the deadline extended. I started spending more and more time in my room, reading books about art history and antiques. It's funny how things work out sometimes. My room became my haven. Mostly because Rachel claimed she was allergic to my lavender air freshener, and it was the only place she wouldn't go. Do you know what's really wrong? When she feigned to be sick, I felt grateful. At the absolute least, I'd be taken to Grandma Marie's, where someone would inquire about my day or express an interest in what I was up to. Grandma was the person who ignited my interest in old jewelry. She had an outstanding costume collection, which she allowed me to organize and categorize. I suppose I should have interpreted that as a prophecy. The worst part was not even the obvious bias. It was how they rewrote history to justify their behavior. Rachel just needs more attention because she had such a rough start. Sarah's always been so independent. Sarah understands that her sister has special needs. I did not understand. I was a child who couldn't see why having a strong immune system made me less deserving of love. Looking back, I realize how these years shaped me. The continual message that I was somehow unsafe or inconvenient to be around does not simply disappear. But, well, at least it taught me how to be self-sufficient. When no one checks your homework or cares about your accomplishments, you quickly learn to be your own motivator. High school. The majority of individuals either loved or disliked it. Me, I saw it as a ticket out. While Rachel was building her acting empire in middle school, I was preparing for my own departure. And let me tell you, nothing motivates you more than the realization that no one will do it for you. Remember how I said I spent hours organizing Grandma Marie's jewelry collection? That taught me a crucial lesson: the need for systematic organization and attention to detail. In high school, I viewed everything from the same standpoint. My workstation at home looked like something out of an organization magazine. Color-coded notes, perfectly planned study schedules, and everything had its place. Rachel mocked me about it by calling me Rain Man. Very good, sis. But here's the thing about being invisible. No one notices your failures or triumphs. So do whatever you want. I joined every club that didn't conflict with my part-time job at Carson's Diner. Thank you, Carol, the owner, for remembering my birthday when my parents had forgotten. Debate team? Check. Who is the National Honor Society's president? Check. Who is the editor-in-chief of the school paper? Check. The debate team was when I truly discovered my voice. There's something rather satisfying in shattering someone's argument while remaining calm. It also taught me how to negotiate, something I hadn't realized at the time but would come in handy later. I've won states twice. Rachel had significant soccer games, so my parents were unable to attend both events. She was on the C team. Didn't even play. The game changer. The junior year was when things really became interesting. I took the SAT and got perfect scores. Not, oh, pretty good, perfect. I mean perfect. 1,600. You know how many people get it? Less than 1%. I remember staring at the results screen for about 20 minutes, thinking there was a mistake. I rushed home to inform my parents. I know this is foolish. Mom was in the kitchen, helping Rachel with her English homework. The conversation went something like this. My reaction was, "Mom? Look, I got a perfect SAT score." "Mommy. That's nice, honey, but can you keep it down?" Rachel's trying to concentrate. She has a big test tomorrow. "Rachel, you are right. Yeah, some of us actually have to study, Miss Perfect," she responded. "Rachel, sweetie, don't stress. You're just a different kind of learner." I still have a copy of those SAT results somewhere. Never got pinned to the refrigerator. But Rachel's C+ in English? That infant got prime refrigerator real estate, complete with a "we're so proud of you" magnet. College applications. The college admission process was interesting. I applied to 15 schools without telling anyone. I wrote all of my own essays, obtained my own recommendations, and completed all of the financial aid paperwork myself. My guiding advisor, Mr. Chen, was the actual MVP. My parents were too busy to help me with the FAFSA, so I stayed late after school. Then acceptance letters began to appear. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Michigan. And each one has a scholarship offer. I kept them all in a locked box under my bed, knowing what would happen if Rachel found them. They had immediately focused their attention totally to her. But if Sarah goes to Harvard, I'll be all alone. Or anything ridiculous like that. Rachel joined JV cheering the same day I received my full ride offer from UMich. Guess which one was marked with a family feast? Hint. I ate microwave mac and cheese in my room while they went to Olive Garden. But you know what? The scholarship was my golden ticket. Tuition, accommodation, and board are all included, along with a book allowance. I could finally leave that house, where I felt invisible or inconvenient. The day I got my acceptance package, I went to my favorite spot in the local library, a fourth-floor window seat overlooking the park, and cried for an hour. Not sad tears. There were tears of relief. When I told my parents at dinner that I was going to UMich, they were overjoyed. He interrupted. "Michigan. But that's so far. What if Rachel needs you?" She shot back. "I hope you're not expecting us to help with expenses. Rachel's cheerleading competitions are very costly." Rachel's voice is broken. "Oh my God, finally. Can I have your room? I need space for my TikTok videos." The summer before college. I worked double shifts at Carson's Diner to save money. Carol, bless her heart, always gave me extra tips and made sure I got to take home leftover pie at the end of my shift. She also taught me an important skill: how to spot genuine people in a world full of fakes. Baby, she said to me, in diners and in life, the ones making the most noise usually have the least to say. Move-in day at Michigan. My parents couldn't attend because, surprise, Rachel had a cheering competition. Aunt Kelly drove me instead, helped me set up my dorm room, and handed me a $500 envelope. Your Grandma Marie wanted you to have this, she stated to me. She's so proud of you. Later I discovered that Grandma had been saving the money from her Social Security payments for months. That first night in my dorm room, I promised myself this: I was going to live such an amazing life that being neglected would be unthinkable. Not for revenge. There's nothing to prove to my family. What about the 8-year-old girl who was taken to Grandma's house for sneezing? College and the start of something new. College passed in a blur of all-nighters, instant ramen, and exquisite liberty. I graduated from the University of Michigan, summa cum laude. Not that my parents noticed. They were too busy helping Rachel transfer to her third college in 2 years. But this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. I landed an entry-level position at Everett and Phillips Auction House in Detroit. I won't use the real name for obvious reasons, but if you're in the industry, you probably know who I'm referring to. An authentic high-end establishment. Many old money customers. That kind of transaction. I started with their estate sales business, which required recording affluent folks' stuff after they died. It wasn't particularly glamorous, but it helped pay the bills. The breakthrough. My first few months were very standard. Logging numerous china sets, categorizing vintage furniture, and so on. Next came the Kingston estate. Mrs. Kingston was an elderly widow who died without children, leaving behind what everyone imagined was a vast collection of costume jewelry. Rooms are filled with the substance. This is when the hours spent at Grandma Marie's came in handy. I'm browsing this stack of jewelry when something catches my eye. This is an Art Deco brooch. Nothing really impressive, yet something about it felt different. The weight was not appropriate for costume jewelry. The clasping mechanism was far too intricate for a copycat. I believe I spent the entire lunch break that day researching vintage jewelry markers and autographs. I ended up staying late at work to use the company's membership in various antique jewelry databases. The more I looked, the more certain I became that this was not costume jewelry. It was the real deal. Problem was, I was the new girl. Nobody would believe me if I said we had a potential treasure in our hands. So I did as the debate team instructed me. I methodically planned my argument. I spent 2 weeks between lunch breaks and evenings, researching everything I could about Art Deco jewelry authentication. I even spent some of my pathetic funds on an online gemology course. Finally got the courage to approach my supervisor, Mr. Harrison. I delivered the complete presentation, which included comparative photographs, historical material, and the works. The conversation went something like this. My reply was this: Sir, I think we might have something significant in the Kingston collection. Harrison looks up from his phone and adds, Sarah, we've already cataloged those as costume pieces. It's true. I know. But look at these makers' marks. They match perfectly with Cartier's 1925 signatures. Harrison, now paying attention. Where did you learn all of this? I replied, I did some research. Long story short? The costume brooch fetched $47,000 at auction. It turns out that it was part of a restricted collection designed for a European C8 in the 1920s. But here's the kicker. Harrison began to trust me after that. He started sending me more relics to authenticate. My meaningless pleasure of sorting ancient jewels took on new meaning. I dedicated myself to studying as much as I could about vintage jewelry. I took every online course that I could afford. I spent weekends going to estate sales and researching goods. Even started a small notepad to record different authentication procedures. My apartment was like a jewelry scholar's fever dream, with walls covered with printouts of vintage hallmarks and certification criteria. The auction house started receiving results. I was discovering key items that others had overlooked, making links with collectors, and understanding the market. My commission checks grew greater. For the first time in my life, I wasn't only surviving, but actually saving money. Family. Still remarkably uninterested. At Sunday meals, which I still attended like a fool, the conversation went like this. Mom. Sarah's still at that antique shop, right? This is my name, Auction House. And yes. Actually, I just authenticated a rare Tiffany piece. Rachel makes an appearance. Oh my God, speaking of jewelry, you guys have to see this charm bracelet I bought at the mall. But I didn't care any longer. For once in my life, I had discovered something truly something I excelled at, something unconnected to Rachel's sisterhood or family disappointment. The Rothschild collection. Then came the Rothschild collection. This was about 2 years into my career in the auction business. A huge estate. Old money family. There is a lot of talk in the sector. I was a member of the team that classified their jewelry collection. And that's when I realized it. A reasonably common Art Nouveau piece that everyone else had overlooked. I spent 3 days examining it. I barely slept. It turned out to be a piece from a famous French jeweler's private collection, which was thought to have been lost during World War II. When it sold at auction for $238,000, Harrison summoned me to his office. I thought I was being promoted. Instead, he said something that fundamentally altered the situation. Sarah, you're wasting your talent here. You should be running your own authentication business. Initially, I dismissed it. Me? Start a business? With what money? However, the idea took root. I started doing small freelance authentication jobs on the side. Word spread that I had an amazing site. Private collectors started contacting us directly. One night, while sitting in my small apartment, surrounded by jewelry instructions and authentication equipment that I had steadily accumulated, I had an insight. This is something I could truly accomplish. I could make anything on my own. So I did what a decent person would do. I took out a hefty loan against my vehicle. I depleted my savings account. I rented a small office space in a less desirable part of town. People thought I was insane. Maybe I was. I renovated a storage room above a Chinese restaurant, which was roughly the size of a college dorm room. The rent was inexpensive since the place usually smelled like Kung Pao chicken, and the Wi-Fi only worked if you sat in the corner by the window. But it was mine. The struggle. The first few months were fascinating. And when I say interesting, I mean terrifying. I would arise at 4 a.m. With cold shivers, I calculated how many months till my funds were out. Loan installments were like a rope around my neck. My office furnishings consisted of, I bought a card table from Goodwill. I genuinely found a chair on the curb. Don't worry, it was well cleaned. However, in the world of high-end jewelry, reputation and connections are critical. And my experience at the auction house gave me both. I started out modestly, doing authentication work for local antique dealers. My costs were lower than those of larger organizations, but my attention to detail was becoming well known. Word spread. 6 months later, a watershed moment happened. A dealer I'd worked with at the auction house inquired about a collection of Victorian-era brooches. Prior to selling, the owner wanted confirmation. It turned out to be a large collection, including items from 3 generations of families. I worked on it for 2 weeks straight, barely sleeping and documenting everything. I found 2 incredibly rare pieces that had been misidentified as later reproductions. The owner was so pleased with my meticulous analysis that she not only paid my fee, but also promised me a 10% commission if the piece sold. Was it a commission? $86,000. More money than I had earned during the previous 2 years combined. Suddenly my phone rang. A lot. Private collectors have heard about my ability to locate missing pieces. Estate lawyers are seeking advice on inherited jewelry. Even my prior auction house started sending me authentication work. I'm quite sure Harrison was surreptitiously spreading the news. Thanks, boss. Scaling up. By year 2, I had hired my first employee, Jenny, a recent gemology graduate who reminded me far too much of myself at that age. She was incredibly clever, yet she was overlooked because she was quiet. She is now my head of authentication, and is really valuable. The firm grew faster than I could have expected. We moved to a proper downtown office. Goodbye Kung Pao chicken odor. I formed a team of specialists. I've developed a reputation for finding misplaced stuff. You wouldn't believe how many significant historical jewelry objects get misidentified as costume jewelry in people's attics. keeping it a secret from my family. However, success brought its own set of challenges. As we grew, it became more difficult to keep it a secret from my family. They still assumed I worked at an antique business. Rachel would make the following snarky remarks during family dinners. Rachel wants to know, "Sarah, I have some old jewelry I was going to donate to Goodwill. Maybe your little shop would want it?" Me, having just authenticated a $1.2 million Fabergé treasure that morning. "Sure, I'll look into it." Mom continued to introduce me to everyone as, "My other daughter. She works with old jewelry or something." Meanwhile, I was quoted in Forbes, thankfully under my company name, and we had just completed our third office. What's so unusual about it? Keeping the secret was almost delightful. Like this private joke with myself. I'd sit at Sunday dinner in my Target bargain attire, actually Chanel, listening to Rachel discuss her entry-level marketing job, while knowing I'd just closed a deal for more than her annual salary. I even started playing small games with myself, like wearing genuine Harry Winston items to family events and seeing whether anyone noticed. They never did. Rachel once spent 20 minutes displaying her pricey $200 Michael Kors watch. I was wearing a classic Patek Philippe, which cost more than her car. Managing growth. However, the true challenge was managing expansion. By year 5, we had opened offices in Detroit, Chicago, and New York. I spent more time on flights than in my own bed. We established a reputation for discretion. It turns out that many wealthy individuals want their diamonds authenticated, without the rest of the world knowing. The money was huge. For example, we needed to hire a big number of financial advisors. Nonetheless, I lived a rather modest lifestyle. I bought a nice, though not flashy house in a desirable neighborhood. I drove a high-end, but not obvious vehicle. The only place I really splurged? My home office. Advanced authentication equipment. The best security system money can buy. A custom-built vault to make Fort Knox jealous. What is with the irony? They thought I was being frugal by helping them. Mom would say things like, "It's so sweet of Sarah to help out. She must be eating nothing but ramen to manage it." Meanwhile, I had just validated a collection, which paid me a commission that exceeded their mortgage. You know what's odd about success? The more you have, the more difficult it is to explain to others who have always considered you inadequate. It's like describing color to someone who's only ever seen black and white. They lacked the crucial context. By this point, my company was doing quite well. We dominated the Midwest's high-end jewelry authentication sector, and our reputation was solid gold. Pun intended. But every Sunday, I'd go to my parents' place for dinner and play Sarah, the modest antique shop worker. The cognitive dissonance was becoming ridiculous. I'd spend my mornings on conference calls with Dubai collectors, my afternoons authenticating million-dollar pieces, and my evenings at my parents' house in carefully chosen ordinary clothes, eating Mom's overcooked pot roast while Rachel dominated the conversation with tales of her latest marketing triumph. Usually something like delivering her boss's coffee without spilling it. A defining moment. One Sunday is very noteworthy in my thoughts. I had just concluded a large deal, authenticating a missing Cartier piece that had been in someone's safe deposit box for 40 years. Was it only the commission? 7 figures. I drove directly from the meeting to my parents' house, still ecstatic with the successful authentication. She responded, "Sarah, honey, is everything okay? Your clothes are looking a bit worn." "Oh, trying to save money," I explained, wearing a $3,000 cashmere sweater that I had carefully chosen for its understated appearance. Rachel gave an answer. "Well, if you'd gotten a real job instead of playing with old jewelry." "Your father." "Rachel, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you." I nearly choked on my pot roast while trying not to giggle. The anonymous transfers monthly payments to my parents began about this time. Aunt Kelly informed me that they were struggling to pay Rachel's university loans and medical expenditures. Mom casually mentioned that they might need to sell the house. I could not let that happen. Despite everything, it remained my childhood home. So I set up an anonymous monthly transfer of $5,000 to their account. When asked, I stated that I was donating $1,000 while living on rice and beans. They assumed the remainder came from Aunt Kelly or another household. Rachel, of course, took credit for inspiring family members to help. Watching Rachel blow my money. The money was useful, but it had unanticipated repercussions. My parents began to treat me with a peculiar mix of sorrow and patronizing pride. As if I were some wonderful poverty case, giving up all to support my family. Meanwhile, Rachel's spending grew more excessive. She'd come to dinner with new pricey bags, claiming they were outlet finds. They weren't. I can spot a genuine Gucci at 20 paces. She began taking lavish vacations and bragged on Instagram about her privileged life. I am confident she spent my support money on shopping sprees. Nonetheless, I remained mute. The irony was simply fantastic. The MBA drama. Then came the college fund drama. Rachel stated that she intends to return to school for her MBA. Another private university, of course. The golden child deserves nothing less than the very best. Mom contacted me in tears, explaining that they could not afford it. I offer an idea. Maybe Rachel could look at state schools? They have good programs too. My mom. Oh honey, you don't understand. Your sister needs to maintain certain standards. But speaking of assisting, may I raise my monthly payment for a few years? I upped it to $7,000 per month. My accounts remained unaffected. But seeing them laud Rachel for taking initiative with her education, while assuming I was living off ramen to help out, it stung a little. The real kicker. I was presenting a guest seminar at the same business school Rachel wished to attend. My family didn't know that. The dean personally invited me to present a talk on luxury goods authenticity and business growth. I had to make up an excuse for why I couldn't attend Sunday dinner that week. My own achievement began to feel like a separate life, as if I were a corporate superhero with a secret identity. By day, I ran a multi-million-dollar authentication firm. By night, well, on Sunday evenings, I was simply Sarah, the dissatisfied daughter who worked in an antique shop. The breaking point: Thanksgiving. The weight of the untruth was increasing. Rachel made disparaging remarks about my career on several occasions. Every time Mom apologized to her friends for my modest lifestyle. Every time Dad advised that I obtain an actual job. I think I always knew it would end dramatically. I just didn't expect it to implode so dramatically on Thanksgiving. It started 2 weeks before the holiday. Mom called, crying about her back pain. She had been diagnosed with a herniated disc, and the thought of preparing Thanksgiving dinner for 20 people overwhelmed her. Now I'd like to tell you that I offered to help solely out of goodwill, but seriously? I was tired of pretending her dried turkey was tasty. My reply was, "Why don't I handle the food this year? I can have it catered." She responded, "Oh honey, we can't afford a caterer." My reply was, "Don't worry about the cost. I've been saving up." Mom, concerned. "You're not taking out a loan, are you?" Everything was handled with a high-end catering company that I frequently employ for business occasions. They perform fantastic work, producing food that makes you question why you bothered to prepare it yourself. It cost more than my parents expected me to make in 2 months, but whatever. Thanksgiving morning arrived, and I was feeling very good. I brought my laptop since I needed to monitor a large online auction in Hong Kong. This gorgeous Art Nouveau necklace was for sale, and I had a customer who wanted certification if they won the bid. The meal arrived on time and everything was adequately prepared. Rachel, of course, needed to answer. Rachel asked, "Store-bought stuffing?" "Really, Sarah? Mom's is so much better." This comes from the girl who once triggered the smoke alarm while making toast. Mom apologized to everyone for not cooking herself, but it was clear they were enjoying the food. Rachel shut up after tasting the maple-glazed Brussels sprouts, which, incidentally, cost more per plate than her weekly grocery budget. I stepped away from dinner and dessert to check my laptop. The auction was becoming more exciting, and I needed to be prepared in case my client won. I set up in my old bedroom, which Mom had kept unchanged since high school. In the interim, Rachel's room had gone through 3 makeovers. That's when things went bad. I'd left my authentication program running, with multiple tabs open displaying various accounts and current agreements. Rachel entered without knocking, some things never change, and asked to borrow my phone charger. She spotted my laptop screen and realized this was her moment to finally show how pathetic her older sister was. Rachel, smirking, "Let's show everyone what Sarah's really been up to." Before I could stop her, she grabbed my laptop and proceeded into the dining room. The big reveal: picture this. 20 people, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and my parents, stuffed themselves on gourmet turkey and drank expensive wine. which they mistaken for Trader Joe's. Rachel's reaction. Time to see what kind of important work Sarah's doing on Thanksgiving. She flipped the laptop around triumphantly, clearly aiming to embarrass me with whatever little antique transactions she believed I was working on. The room became utterly silent. You could hear the nice clock I bought Mom for Christmas ticking silently. She thought it was a reproduction. My screen showed. Current account balance is $12.4 million. Pending authentication contract, $485,000. Recent transaction, $1.2 million. Hong Kong auction. Company's quarterly profit report, $4.2 million. Rachel's face changed into 5 different expressions in 3 seconds. The final one fell somewhere between shock and nausea. She did stagger somewhat on her feet. Rachel says quietly, "This cannot be right," she asked. "Rachel, honey, what is it?" Rachel's voice cracks. She's rich. Sarah's rich." Chaos ensues. If it was possible, the silence deepened even further. Then Mom began to giggle. Like truly laughing. She responded with, "Don't be silly. Sarah works at that little antique shop." I stood up slowly, straightening out my basic cashmere sweater, which cost more than their monthly mortgage. Me. Yes. Actually, Mom, I own one of the largest jewelry authentication companies in the country. For years. Those antique shop comments? I authenticate pieces worth millions. That little business you never asked about? It has offices in 3 cities. Dad choked on his liquor. Aunt Kelly dropped her fork. Uncle Mike started coughing severely. Then Mom's laughter changed to something else. Her cheeks went red and then purple. She stood so rapidly that her chair fell over. Mom yells, "You have millions, and you let us struggle?" My response, "Struggle? I send you $7,000 every month." She gave an answer. "While sitting on millions? Your sister has student loans." So there it was. Instead say congratulations. Incorrect. Wow, we're so proud. Just outraged because I hadn't given them more money. Rachel started crying. Surprising, I know. Weeping about how she deserved to know, and how I had betrayed the family. Dad joined in. My grandfather. "How could you be so selfish? We're your parents. We raised you." That's when I lost it. Years of indifference. Years of dismissal. Years of being viewed as a family disappointment. Everything gushed out. My answer was this. Raised me. You shipped me off to grandma's every time I sneezed. You missed every achievement, every award, every milestone, because Rachel might feel left out. You never saved a penny for my college but took out loans for her private school. And now, you're mad that I built something for myself? The next 5 minutes were chaos. Mom raged about family obligations. Dad is angry at the ungrateful children. Rachel alternated between sobbing and demanding to know exactly how much money I had. Meanwhile, the elegant catering team attempted to serve dessert while appearing extremely uncomfortable. I grabbed my laptop, took out my Hermes bag, which Mom had earlier praised as a nice replica, and walked out. Behind me I could hear Mom talking about how to spend my money, something about Rachel's MBA and a new car. As I drove home in my reasonable car, a limited edition BMW, my phone began to fill up with texts. The family group chat erupted. Rachel started writing on Facebook about hidden family wealth and selfish siblings. The aftermath. The days following Thanksgiving were like watching a hurricane strike in slow motion. Except that the hurricane represented my family, while the debris represented my sanity. Let's start with SMS messages. Within 1 hour after leaving dinner, my phone had 47 missed calls. More than 200 messages. Mom followed this interesting progression. 7:42 p.m. How dare you walk out on family? 8:15 tonight. We need to talk about this like adults. 9:03 p.m. Your sister deserves a share of your success. 10:30 at night. I've already called a realtor about houses in better neighborhoods. 11:45 in the evening. Why aren't you answering? This is your mother. Meanwhile, Rachel had transformed into a full-fledged social media combatant. Rachel, on the other hand, had completely embraced social networking. She posted a lengthy diatribe on Facebook about how her millionaire sister had been hoarding wealth while watching her beloved family struggle. The commentary section was wild. Distant cousins and former high school classmates, whom I hadn't communicated with in years, developed strong opinions about my moral character. But this is when things became interesting for me. Rachel actually posted, "All those years of me trying to help Sarah's career, giving her advice about moving up from that little antique shop. And she was secretly wealthy." The betrayal hurt so much, I nearly threw my phone across the room. What was the only professional advice she ever provided me? I proposed that I try selling jewelry on Etsy. If you're not familiar with the term, flying monkeys are when toxic family members send others to guilt trip you. Aunt Susan, whom I saw maybe once every 3 years, called to tell me that family is everything. Uncle Bob, who I'm pretty sure still thinks I'm 12, emailed me a long lecture about the importance of sharing wealth. Even my third cousin's wife's sister, how did she get my phone number, felt compelled to share her thoughts on family responsibilities. But the real fun started when they arrived at my workplace. When I arrived on Monday morning, I found Mom, Dad, and Rachel sitting in our welcome area. They told Jenny, my receptionist, that they had an appointment to authenticate services. Rachel held her Michael Kors bag as if it were actually worth something. The conversation went about as well as you would anticipate. "Your mother says, we've discussed it as a family." I responded by asking, "A family discussion? Without the family member you're discussing?" Mom, ignoring me. "And we think it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone." Rachel responds, "I need at least $2 million to start my new life properly." Your dad responded, "And your mother and I would like to retire. We're thinking of a beach house in Florida." This is who I am. "Did you miss the part where I've been sending you $7,000 monthly?" Rachel says, "That's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us." You're puzzled. I owe you? For what exactly? The years of being ignored, the missed graduations, the constant comparisons? Mama said, "Don't be dramatic, Sarah. We gave you everything." My reply was, "No. I gave myself everything. And you know what? I'm done." Right there in my office lobby, I took out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers to their account. Mom gasped, as if I had slapped her. Rachel began her phony crying performance but quickly stopped when she realized it wasn't effective. Then everything turned ugly. They refused to leave. I needed to contact security. Seeing my 60-year-old mother being hauled out while ranting about ungrateful children was strange. Jenny asked whether I wanted to press charges. I said no. However, I had their names added to the building's do not admit list. The harassment continued for weeks. New phone numbers, fake email addresses, even attempted to contact me via my company's customer service. Finally, I had to serve a formal legal notice, threatening harassment charges. Mom then played her last card. She called Grandma Marie. But here's the thing about Grandma Marie. She is wiser than all of them together. How did she reply? "Good for Sarah. About time someone in this family succeeded on their own terms." Mom didn't speak to her for 2 months after that. It's been 6 months since Thanksgiving. I moved to a new home with stronger security. I adjusted all of my figures. How about the company? We're doing better than ever. It turns out that my family troubles drew some high-profile clients who appreciated my caution in the situation. Rachel continues to post passive-aggressive updates about toxic wealth and family betrayal. According to what I've heard, she's starting her own jewelry authentication firm. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad stopped trying to contact me when my lawyer sent them an official letter describing how the harassment charges would affect their lives. They are now telling everyone that they never wanted my money anyway, and are praying for my salvation. What is the best part? For the first time in my life, I feel emancipated. No more Sunday dinners filled with subtle insults. I will no longer downplay my accomplishments to protect their feelings. The Rachel Show is no longer financially supported. My therapist says, I have finally established good boundaries. I say, I'm finally living truthfully. So, that's my tale, Reddit. Thank you for letting me share it. Special thanks to the catering company, which sent me a Christmas letter saying the Thanksgiving dinner was the highlight of their year. Edit. Answers to common questions. Yes, I'm still in treatment. No, I don't regret cutting them off. Yes, Grandmother Marie is doing fine. She's coming to visit next month to help me catalog a new collection. One final thing. To Rachel. I know you are probably reading this. What about the Cartier bracelet you wore in your most recent Instagram post? Definitely a fake. Just saying. After paying their mortgage for years, my sister showed up with a can of red paint to ruin my wedding. Now she's claiming my house is hers. They sued me. For the house I paid for. For the dog they abandoned. For hurting the family. But this time, the judge heard my voice. I was urged by my parents to spend the holidays at home. They left me to dogs it while they went on a lavish vacation without me after a 5-hour journey. I refrained from arguing. I simply grinned. However, they began to scream when they returned and witnessed this. Let's go back. I received the first text in early December. This year, will you be returning home? It would mean a lot to your dad and me, she continued. Then came the one that really got to me. Without you, the holidays aren't the same. I spent a lot of time staring at that one. It was the type of message I had been hoping for years, a statement I had practiced hearing so many times that I didn't even question it when it finally arrived in my inbox. I grinned. The work had been harsh. There weren't enough people on my team. My sleep routine had changed to include naps in between Zoom sessions. However, I reminded myself, they miss you. They asked for you. So I did what I don't often do. I took a break. I cleared 5 complete days, but it took a whole week of arguing with my manager, changing deadlines, and promising to check in just in case. I purchased a ticket. I even brought along a couple modest presents. I hoped we would actually converse, play board games, and laugh at corny holiday films. It was a lengthy and painful flight. Something that smelled like hot cheese-dipped feet was consumed by my seatmate. I didn't care though. The kind of foolish optimism that endures years of disregard and yet appears with a bow on its head was buzzing through me. With my suitcase in hand and a smile on my face, I got out of the Uber. At that moment, I witnessed my dad's car's trunk opening and 3 big suitcases being crammed inside. I had a fleeting feeling that they could surprise me. Perhaps we were traveling together. This might have been part of the idea. I was witnessing my holiday fantasy evaporate in real time, but then my mom saw me and waved happily. When she called, there she is. Just in time. I blinked. Just in time for what? She stated, the cruise, as though it were clear. We didn't want to leave Bentley alone. She pointed to the dog, who was standing behind the front door, watching me. I believed I had misheard. You're going on a cruise? My dad said, just a quick getaway. And slammed the trunk. We've had a stressful year. Josh, who was in the passenger seat, smiled at me. You'll be fine here. You love quiet. This is perfect for you. He said it as if I were a robot or a rice cooker, something made especially to work in silence. My mother gave me a folded list called Bentley's holiday routine while I stood there still holding my suitcase. It contained items such as, rub his ears clockwise, not counterclockwise, and lavender diffuser at 8 p.m. I said nothing at all. I simply grinned and nodded, as I always do when I'm trying not to cry. Already preoccupied, they gave me a quick embrace. I was reminded by my mother to keep Bentley from eating cheese. I was instructed to pick up a delivery that was supposed to happen on Wednesday by my dad. After that, they got into their vehicle and drove off. Nobody inquired about my flight experience. Nobody asked me to accompany them. Nobody even inquired about my meal. And suddenly I was by myself. At a home that I own. I haven't lived with a dog in years, but I officially adopted him since I couldn't refuse my younger brother's request. I secured the door. Bentley crouched at my feet, tail wagging unsurely as he patted over. Whispering, "Hi, buddy." I knelt down to stroke him. He had the stench of wet socks and dirty comforters. He appeared leaner than I remembered, and his fur was coarse. He had no water in his bowl. He had 2 long nails. And something twisted inside of me. I sat down on the couch, filled his drink, removed the food they had left, and gazed at the flickering Christmas lights as if they were about to rearrange themselves into an apology. However, nothing took place. There was silence in the house. The heat turned on. Bentley balled himself up. I had a strong belief that this year will be different. That perhaps they were at last prepared to see me as their daughter, not just as the one who sends the money when the car breaks down or the kitchen renovation goes over budget. Their sister. I was mistaken. I felt foolish for ever holding that belief. For always believing that they would eventually find me worthy of staying at home if I put in enough effort, achieved enough success, or proved myself helpful enough. Rather, they viewed me as an easy fix. Dog care is free. As well as integrated home security. On-time arrival of their own tiny robot. I made an effort to shake it off. That was what I had done all my life. making justifications for them. Not personal, I told myself. Because it was simply difficult to love me. That perhaps if I made a few more changes. I tried not to cry as I rubbed my temples. The scent of candle wax and cinnamon filled the air. There were decorations all around me that I hadn't hung. They didn't thank me for paying off the house. Watching a dog that they no longer cared for as soon as the novelty wore off. What's the worst? I still desired a call from them. Even so, I wanted them to reverse the vehicle and say, "We're sorry. We didn't realize. We love you. Please come with us." However, they refused. They didn't. Bentley sighed quietly as he slept. After giving him a long look, I went to the kitchen and turned on my laptop. Really, I had no idea what I was looking for, but I was certain that I couldn't continue to act as though this was the norm. Since it wasn't. And perhaps, just possibly, I had had enough of waiting for someone else to notice. Bentley cuddled himself on the couch beside me, putting his weight on my leg as if it would help me stay attached. He smelled of old shoes and melancholy, and his fur was patchy and matted. I didn't mind though. The only one who hadn't gone was him. No one came out to say, "Surprise? We didn't actually abandon you. We were just kidding. We do love you." I continued to stare at the empty living room as if I was still expecting for someone to do so. I had no idea why it struck so forcefully. Perhaps because I had persuaded myself that I was more important than I actually was. That they would ultimately regard me as more than just the girl who paid for things if I simply continued to provide. Perhaps as someone they desired to be around. I always believed that they would let me in if I could simply correct whatever was wrong with me. Growing up, I assumed that something about me must be flawed. There was a missing component that caused folks to shrug rather than embrace. It was me who was strange. The silent one. The girl who color-coded her books, who enjoyed creating Excel spreadsheets, and who liked math problems more than makeup. When I was 10 years old, my mother half-jokingly remarked, "You weren't the easiest child to bond with." Everyone said that my brother's taunting of me was simply an expression of their affection. They said I was overly sensitive when I sobbed. So I stopped crying. That also didn't help. On one of my birthdays, I believe I was 8 years old, they threw me a party. I was ecstatic. My brothers even claimed to have invited the kids from the neighborhood. I brought out cupcakes that I had prepared myself and donned my finest clothes. However, there were no individuals in the yard when I arrived. Just a sheet of paper with arithmetic problems and numbers on it taped to the fence. Josh had chuckled and said, "Your kind of party." After that, they all hurried to another person's house for the actual party. I spent hours sitting on the porch steps. Even the equations were solved by me. Perhaps it was the secret, I thought. Perhaps they would return if I figured them all out. They didn't. I believed that I could fit in better by high school. I made an effort to chuckle when appropriate. Despite the fact that the garments didn't feel like mine, I borrowed them from Dorothy. In order to avoid looking strange, I practiced smiling in front of the mirror and joined clubs that I didn't care about. I was still referred to as intense, aloof, and somewhat robotic. I once heard Dorothy say, "You're not ugly." I tried to learn how to act like a real girl, but you simply don't know how. Even so, I was the one who was overlooked for the invitation. The person who solely received thank you texts in response to Venmo requests. The person who was often told, "You're just really hard to get close to." My parents did not attend my graduation, saying, "We're proud of you, honey, but just don't let it go to your head." I was accepted to an Ivy League school. They claimed that plane tickets were too costly. Until I saw pictures from Josh's birthday vacation to Cabo that same week, I thought they were real. They simply had a stronger bond with him, I told myself. That it wasn't intimate. That they would start seeing me if I could simply be more of anything. I received my degree. I was hired. Whenever they requested money, I sent it. The mortgage on the home they occupied was paid by me. In fact, I assisted Dorothy during her divorce. Perhaps, I reasoned, charity could take the place of intimacy. Perhaps if I put enough effort into them, I would ultimately make up the difference. However, if someone has chosen not to love you, no amount of offering can change that. I finally felt it, not anger, nor even betrayal, as Bentley shored against my hip while I sat on that couch. Only a faint, sluggish realization. In their lives, I served as a stand-in. A human-sized financial strategy. And I felt like the world's most stupid person because I ever believed I could be greater. I surveyed the mess they had left behind. There is food on the counters. Soiled dishes. Boxes that are not fully packed. Even when I was returning home for the first time in a year, they seemed unconcerned about keeping the property tidy. Because I wasn't truly a guest in their eyes. The assistant was me. The accountable one. The integrated safety net. Bentley appeared thinner than I had recalled. His water bowl smells strange, and his nails were too long. He gave a small whine when I knelt down to scratch behind his ears, as if he had been waiting weeks for someone to notice him. My head was leaning on the wall. Perhaps I was the issue after all. I could be difficult to adore. Too silent. Too weird. Too clinical. In an attempt to identify the exact moment I became invisible, I relived every interaction I had ever had with my family. Perhaps I shouldn't have gone. Perhaps my success made me conceited. Perhaps I gave up trying. Or perhaps they made no attempt at all. I formerly believed that setting limits was a sign of selfishness, because the only ones who said no were those who were unkind. That sacrifice was necessary for love, especially when it was painful. Now, though, I just feel small now. And worn out. And finished. As I got up, Bentley groaned softly. I filled his bowl with new water and offered him a treat I had discovered in the pantry. I then went to open my laptop at the kitchen table. I just knew that something had finally changed inside of me, but I had no idea what I was doing. Not broken, not detonated, simply moved. I spent a considerable amount of time looking at the search results after typing, "What to do if a family lives in your house rent-free." I wasn't sure if I would actually follow through on anything. My sense of authority was lacking. I was not feeling smart. I simply felt finished. Let them say I overreacted and was aloof. Let them express themselves as they see fit. They had it already. Bentley pressed his nose against my palm. After giving him a gentle head rub, I muttered, "If there's something wrong with me, at least I'm finally doing something about it." In one of the articles, I hit print. Slowly, as if unsure too, the paper slipped off the tray. It was a Sunday evening when they returned. I remained there. Due to a family emergency, my supervisor let me work from home. Bentley sprung out of his dog bed and gave a bark that was more startled than happy, so I knew exactly when the car pulled into the driveway. My heart was racing more than I wanted to acknowledge as I remained motionless in the corridor. It was like hearing an alarm in a once secure area. The car door slammed. Loud, familiar, reckless voices. "I told you she'd be fine," my mother said. "She loves quiet time." "She probably reorganized the pantry for fun," said Josh. More giggling, I remained motionless. Through the peephole, I observed. The first person to notice was Dorothy. She pulled once more after jiggling the handle. I pictured the gradual boil of entitlement building as her brows knotted in perplexity. "Why is the door locked?" Dad gave his key a try. "Nothing." Josh took the next step and attempted to shoulder it. I snatched Bentley up before he could become even more agitated when he barked once more, louder this time. My arm shook a little, but not because I was afraid. Another stuff. Something more subdued. Final. Then there was a knock. "Nicole, open up." The lock jammed. Bentley and I sat on the couch as I caressed his ears. One more knock. Then it was more difficult. Then the beating of fists. "Nicole, what the hell? Did you change the locks?" I didn't respond. I had. I changed the locks 3 days after they departed. I was practical, not angry, though I had plenty of emotion. The home was in disarray. Bentley had been left behind. Damage was evident in several of the rooms. Doors were not locked. Trash that is overflowing. I had every right to safeguard the house because I was the rightful owner. Before taking any action, I spoke with a lawyer. They returned with the expectation that everything would still center on them. "You can't do this, this is our house," cried Dorothy. The floodgates opened at that point. "Nicole, open this damn door right now. We trusted you with the dog and the house, and you don't get to just lock us out like some kind of..." It's not solely yours, however, it was. It has been all along. This place was intended to be transitory when I purchased it 6 years ago. A backup plan. While they were living here, I paid the mortgage until they were able to support themselves again. They never departed, for some reason. In their imaginations, the house somehow became theirs. And I turned into some kind landlord who owed them regular revenue and silence. Slowly, I got to my feet. My hands were shaking, but not in the same way. Fear wasn't the reason. Adrenaline was the cause. My decision is being followed by my body. I approached the front door but chose not to open it. I only used the closed frame to speak. I stated, "I secured the property," in a firm voice. "You left it in poor condition. Bentley was neglected. The house was unlocked." I spoke with a lawyer. Quiet. Then, loud and furious, "Dorothy. You're insane. You can't just change the locks because you feel like it." "I didn't feel like it," I answered. I'm the legal owner, and I did what was necessary to protect my home. Josh began shouting that he was going to sue me. When Dad suggested that we skip church for my math competition, his voice soared to a level I hadn't heard since I was 15. You ungrateful brat. After everything we've done for you. I chuckled. I didn't intend to. I was shocked by the sudden, piercing, breathless sound that came out. I said again, everything you've done for me? You mean the financial black hole? Free babysitting? Or did you joke about leaving me alone with arithmetic problems at the birthday party? More shouting. I turned to leave. I informed my lawyer over the phone that they had arrived. She instructed them not to open the door and to inform them that any correspondence should henceforth be sent through her office. Josh then tried to pry open the kitchen window by going around the side. From the porch, Dorothy let out a shriek. The neighbors could hear my mom sobbing as she stood in the yard. Incredulous that the waitress had just given him the bill, my dad paced. I made a police call. I gave the deed, pictures of the house's condition, and the veterinarian's report from Bentley's examination to the authorities when they got there. The cops were composed and competent. They turned to my dad, one of them. Sir, she owns the house. There's no lease agreement. She has every legal right to secure the property. My mother sobbed. You're just going to let her do this to us? According to the officer, she hasn't done anything illegal. Nobody stood up for my family, for once. Nobody made me the antagonist by twisting the narrative. There were no jokes about me or pitying glances. Just the facts. Just limits. Just hearing me out. The police suggested that they depart and allow any disagreements to be resolved through official legal procedures. My family was astonished, incensed, and embarrassed as they stood there, but they eventually departed. Their car backed out of the driveway, and I watched from the window. I was flipped off from the passenger seat by Dorothy as she turned. Josh yelled something that I was unable to hear. My mother didn't turn around. And I didn't feel like the one left behind for the first time in my life. Uncomfortably, Bentley climbed into my lap, grounding me with his weight. Whispering, I think we're going to be okay, I said. I had always hoped that they would accept me if I simply repaired myself. That they would notice me if I put forth enough effort, smiled enough, and contributed enough. But I didn't need to be fixed. Perhaps I wasn't broken because I was the quiet one. It might have made me mine. I refrained from crying. I might, I thought, but no tears remained. Just a strong, throbbing feeling of something else, power, calm, release. I no longer felt wounded or angry, just finished. And that can be stronger than anger at times. That should be the end of it, I thought. However, when entitlement has been their love language for decades, individuals like my family don't lose quietly. After they went, I began getting emails 3 days later. My dad came last, followed by my mother and sister. Confusion gave way to anger and then to desperate manipulation. You've embarrassed us? We don't understand why you're doing this. You're being dramatic, Nicole. This isn't like you. And lastly, Dorothy's icing on the cake. You seriously need help. I didn't answer. I sent all of this to my lawyer. The escalation followed. Assuming I would be away, they attempted to break in once more, this time in the middle of the night. The security video captured Josh and my dad attempting to force the back door with a crowbar as the motion sensor lights turned on. Once more, the police arrived. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode. My CEO seat was stolen and given to my brother. Now I've joined the one uncle they hated most, became CFO, and their company is falling apart. 9 years of loyalty, and they gave my position to a 23-year-old with zero experience. So I joined the one man they hated most, and I'm taking their team with me. Hello, I'm a 30-year-old lady who was just cut off by my family since I left the family business and went against my uncle, who is retiring this year. I'm here to ask if I'm in the wrong. So, for perspective, my father, who would have been 63 this year, had 2 younger brothers, Blake and George, 59 and 56 years old, and they had all inherited my grandfather's real estate firm. He had thought that the 3 brothers would operate the establishment as co-owners, and everything would be okay. But 6 years after my grandfather retired, my uncle George decided to leave the firm and start his own business. He was also cut off from his family because no one approved his decision to compete with his own brothers in business. So, for the past 16 years, no one in the family has spoken to him, nor have they acknowledged his existence. They pretend he was never a member of the family at all. I had learned to do the same thing. Anyway, my father passed away 3 years ago from bilateral kidney failure. His health had already deteriorated prior to the incident, and he had been teaching me to take over in case he became bedridden. Obviously, no one expected him to die, but it was fortunate that I was prepared to step into his shoes and take on his responsibilities at the company. I hadn't only been doing his work and assisting my Uncle Blake in running the company for the past 3 years. In fact, since graduating from business school, I had been working with my father and uncle to learn the ropes in the hopes of someday becoming a partner in the firm. So it had been about 9 years since I had started working here, and I had certainly anticipated becoming a partner in the firm soon, as that was what my father had desired. However, around 10 days ago, I learned that my uncle had decided to make his son a partner, leaving me as the CFO. When my father was alive, he was CEO, and my uncle was CFO. Following his death, my uncle assumed the post of CEO, and I was elevated to CFO. So, if someone was supposed to take my uncle's job after he retires in a few years, shouldn't it be me? My cousin Dean had never been in the photo before, so this action caught me completely off guard. He's 23 years old and graduated barely a year ago. He has an economics degree but no practical or hands-on experience, and more importantly, he is far too young to be a partner in the firm. He has not paid his dues, and I am confident that he does not deserve it any more than I do. So, naturally, I was really unhappy when I learned about this. I didn't even find out from my uncle directly. It was my mother who told me that she had just learned from Dean's mother that I had turned down the opportunity to be a partner in the firm, and that my uncle was now offering it to Dean. When my mother told me about it, I immediately phoned my uncle because we hadn't discussed it before, and I assumed it was a joke. However, when we spoke on the phone, he told me that he was seriously considering making Dean the CEO of the company and a partner in the firm because he was retiring in a few months. I was astonished, and I reminded him that Dean had never worked before. He'd spent the last year figuring himself out and exploring, so he was unskilled and unqualified for the job. And then my uncle told me that presumably, this is where I come in, because since I'll be mentoring him, he won't have anything to worry about. So it is not as if I am no longer needed in the organization. He still needs me to handle everything until Dean adjusts, and I will continue to serve as the company's chief financial officer. But I wasn't okay with it. I informed him that I had worked really hard over the last 9 years and deserved the recognition that I was due. Dean did not deserve this position, and I made it known that I was dissatisfied with the choice. So, if he decided to make Dean a partner in the firm and CEO, I would stand down from my position and leave the company as well. My uncle tried to tell me that I was overreacting, that he was only doing this to protect Dean's future, and that he would not settle for anything less than the position of CEO. He didn't want to leave the firm as my Uncle George did, so this was his only alternative, and he wanted me to understand. He even tried to reassure me by claiming that Dean would only be the company's nominal CEO, but I would be in charge, and he knew Dean would respect me. I attempted to bargain with him. I told him I was willing to compromise for my position as CFO, but I wanted him to make me a partner in the company. And he stated he wasn't sure if he could do it since he needed to talk to Dean first. But I didn't care. I'd put in the effort, and I wanted to be CEO and partner, or even simply a partner. So he could do it or I'd leave. It was an ultimatum. When my uncle and I got into a debate over this, he eventually informed me that we lived in a free nation, so I could do whatever I wanted. But his mind was already made up. He had also addressed this with the board members, and he planned to make his announcement within the next few days. His mind was set up, and I had two options. Cope with it or leave as I had promised. It was a difficult day for me to find out where I stood with my uncle, because I had always assumed we had a wonderful connection. But plainly, when it came to our working connection, I had misjudged our closeness. It's not surprising either. Dean has always been privileged, so I'm not surprised that my uncle selected him over me. This is his flesh and blood, so I could never compete. Anyway, I was really furious by the outcome, and my mother suggested that I get a lawyer and pursue them legally. But I did not want to do that. Instead, I devised a better strategy that would thoroughly irritate them. I'm sure most of you can guess what I did next, but for those who don't, I sent an email to my Uncle George that day. I briefed him on everything that had occurred and stated that I would be willing to work for him right now if he wanted me to. I didn't want to sit around and mope over what I had lost. The only thing on my mind right now was getting back at my uncle, so I didn't think twice about contacting Uncle George. He responded to me within 24 hours. He stated that he was prepared to offer me the position of Chief Financial Officer and that he would be willing to elevate me to Chief Executive Officer in a few years after his retirement. He had agreed to my terms for making me a partner in the firm since I was willing to tell him everything I know about my company to help him succeed. So we actually got to meet in person a few days ago, and it was a lot of fun. I just had to shut him out of my life because my parents and the rest of my family requested it, but aside from that, I've never had a negative connection with Uncle George. In fact, he had always been the fun uncle, and we were very close until I was 15 years old. But then the feud occurred, and he was isolated, and I never spoke to him again, until today. When I was little, I was never informed exactly why Uncle George broke away from the family. Even now, when I met him, he refused to discuss it. But it was his decision, and I needed to respect it. However, he told me that he was amazed that Uncle Blake had pulled off something like this since, when my father was alive, he would never have attempted such a thing. Anyway, he was pleased that it had worked out in his favor, and he expressed his desire to have me on board because he had only heard positive things about me. They had maintained a close eye on us and our business because they were our main competitors. He stated that he was aware of my significant contributions to the company and was excited to have me on his side this time. He also told me that, unlike Uncle Blake, he did not have any children, so I had nothing to worry about there either. We finished everything, and I resigned the same day. Uncle Blake seemed unaffected by my resignation. I texted him formally to inform him that I would not be present for the next 2 weeks, as he had stated unequivocally that the company would function perfectly without me. He assured me he was fine with it and that he already had replacements lined up, so I didn't have to worry about my job. And that was all. I didn't speak with him after that. However, yesterday Uncle George and I finally shared a photo together to honor the fact that I was now joining him. I went out to dinner with the team to meet and talk with a handful of other upper-level executives in his organization before starting work with them. To say that my family is currently crashing and burning would be an understatement. Because ever since I posted yesterday night, I've been inundated with text messages, voicemails, and phone calls. I haven't responded to anyone, but I can sense that people are upset. Uncle Blake is furious and has already labeled me a traitor, threatening that I will pay the consequences of this decision. He can do his absolute worst. I've also been denounced by many other members of the family, which I find weird because, based on the text they sent, they appear to already know that I did all of this because I was passed over for a partner in the firm and was replaced by Dean. But if they did not speak out against the injustice of what was done to me back then, they have no right to condemn me now. My mother is the only person whose opinion matters to me. When I spoke with her this morning, she didn't seem pleased with my decision either. That surprised me because she had only a few days before insisted that I hire a lawyer to pursue my uncle and collect what is rightfully mine. But now she believes I've gone too far. She told me that there is a lot of history with Uncle George that I am unaware of, and she does not believe it is suitable for me to know. That was pretty frustrating because if they weren't going to tell me why Uncle George had been excluded from the family, I don't think I could decide whether or not to trust him. And, as a mature woman, I believe I am capable of handling the truth, and they should not be afraid of me. So far, based on his actions, he has been extremely courteous to me, and I see no reason to cut him off. But, in any case, my mother stated that the family was quite furious with me, and she was also unhappy about it. But if I'd made up my mind, there was little she could do to change it. I tried to speak with her, but she simply hung off and stated she needed to understand what was going on. So now I'm very conflicted about what's going on. Am I the asshole for joining our competitors after my uncle declined to make me a partner in the firm and chose his son instead? Edit. Hello. So several folks were perplexed as to how I got the job at Uncle George's company so quickly, and it was actually pure luck. His CFO was retiring in a few months anyway, and he had been hunting for a replacement. Fortunately, I emailed him at the perfect time, and that is how I got this opportunity. It's as if the stars and planets have aligned for me too. Also, some of you wanted to know how things were with my Uncle George before he was cut off from the family, and, to be honest, they were never that bad. According to what I saw growing up, my father, Uncle Blake, and Uncle George were always quite close. I knew they had a tremendous dispute, which was why Uncle George left the corporation to start his own business. But until now, I'm not sure what this was about. Nobody wants to talk about it, therefore I can't offer you the information because I don't have it. However, my connection with him was always positive, and I believe I noted this in my original post as well. Even now, when I contacted him via email, he responded politely and warmly. I'm not sure why my family has such a negative opinion of him. They've dubbed him a variety of things. They've described him as conniving, narcissistic, egoistic, and so on. However, every time I've engaged with him, I've never felt like he was any of those things. I'm just perplexed about who to believe. I don't want to make the same mistake of trusting someone again after what happened with Uncle Blake. I don't want the same thing to happen to Uncle George, so I have to be extra careful about these things. And, since my mother isn't pleased with me right now, I'm not sure who to turn to for advice. I can't discuss this with my pals since it is too personal and complicated. Update 1. Hello, it's been 3 days since folks discovered that I was going to be working with Uncle George, and after the first outrage, they've simply stopped talking to me. I suppose this is fair enough. Now that I'm identified with Uncle George, they're treating me in the same way they've treated him. I honestly have no idea what occurred between them all those years ago, but I know which side I want to be on, and I can't go back. To be honest, the history of their relationship is irrelevant to me. I can't just quit and go back to working with Uncle Blake right now. I need a job. I need to maintain my current lifestyle, which requires a lot of money. So, whatever it is, I am here now and will make the best of my situation. I told Uncle George about how I was being treated by the family, as if I were a pariah, and he seemed really sad. But he informed me that this is exactly what happened to him, and that I too will get over it with time. Or perhaps I am luckier than him because I am from a younger generation, and they may contact me in the future. But until then, I'll have to tough it out and live with it. I asked him again what had happened to cause all of this, but he refused to discuss it. My mother is still not speaking to me, which hurts the most. But I've been texting her every day and haven't received a response yet. I'm going to be really busy with work over the next several days because I'm new here and have a lot of stuff to catch up on. If she wants to talk to me, she can text me directly. Aside from that, I won't be contacting her anymore. Update 2. Hello, it's been 6 days since I started working with Uncle George, and things are going nicely. The paperwork to make me a partner in the company is still being processed, but I completely trust him. So far, he has treated me with nothing except kindness and respect, and I suppose I must admit that everyone in my family was mistaken about him. He has been quite open with me about everything that is going on. He has informed me that, unlike my former company, they are not a private corporation, thus he will have to have the board of directors to approve everything involving me before I can finalize anything. But he advised me not to worry about it because, as the owner and CEO, it is only a formality at best, and I have nothing to worry about. Since I've already met the majority of the company's employees, and they all appear to like me. Besides, they know about my prior work and know that I am worth it. I'm not too concerned about this scenario and will just focus on working, as Uncle George said. So things are going nicely at work for me. But, to be honest, my personal life is a complete mess right now. My mother and I haven't spoken since that last discussion, and I'm not sure how many days have passed since then. I've been so lonely. Nobody else in the family has spoken to me either, which is difficult. But I am simply trying to deal with it. I still have a few friends from Uncle Blake's company, and they have kept me up to date on what is going on. They apparently publicized that I had left them, but they did not mention that I had departed to work with Uncle George, most likely because it would reflect poorly on the company if someone in my position quit to work for their direct competitors. They also announced that Dean would take over as CEO in a few months once Uncle Blake retired, and that he would become a partner in the corporation. They're throwing a work party in his honor in a few days. The CFO post, which was vacant when I departed, is being filled by one of the workers who had always had subordination issues with me. They probably did it on purpose simply to irritate me. It just made me sorry for them. If that employee had problems with me, I'm confident she will have problems with them in the future as well. But that's their problem today. Anyway, I met with my coworkers and told them that they were welcome to join me and Uncle George now that we could offer them higher pay. Ultimately, it is up to them, but I can see that some of them are eager to work with me because they are concerned about the company's current changes. They believe it is preferable for them to stop while they are ahead. So I've made the offer. Let's see who accepts. Update 3. Hey, it's been over a month since I started working with Uncle George, and things have been going wonderfully. I am now officially the CFO and a partner in the firm. I'm really pleased with it, and even though my mother is still not speaking to me, I believe I've moved on. Another piece of good news is that some of my pals from my old employer have quit their jobs and applied here to work with me, which Uncle George is thrilled with. This move, however, has irritated Uncle Blake even more. He showed up at my house with Dean a few days earlier, after nearly 4 employees had quit to join us. I had just returned home when they began ringing the doorbell, and when I realized it was them, I chatted with them over the intercom. I told them to leave because I didn't want to discuss anything with them. I knew they were here to discuss the fact that I had spoken with a couple of employees and persuaded them to join me. But I assured them that I had not pushed or compelled anyone to do anything. They had made this decision on their own, and I knew they were looking for an excuse to blame me, but even they saw that it was not my fault. Uncle Blake was out of control, and he began yelling at me from outside the door, claiming that I was poaching staff from them, which was simply unfair, and that he would take legal action against me for influencing his employees. I'm quite sure that's not grounds for a lawsuit, but I just let him scream himself hoarse because I knew there was no use in saying anything to him if he couldn't hear me. When he finally appeared to run out of steam, I informed him that I needed him to leave because otherwise they would force my hand and call the cops. And already, so many people were leaving the company. I'm quite sure they didn't want additional people to go because they appeared to be mentally ill. When I said that, Dean suddenly spoke out, saying that this was not the way to treat someone who had been there for me for so long after my father died. He labeled me insensitive and selfish, claiming that I had no regard for what his father had done for my family. I considered the entire thing arrogant and absurd. I told him that I appreciated Uncle Blake as much as he did me. I also told him that my father had worked very hard to get this firm to where it is now, and that following his death, I had worked very hard as well. Dean was the only person who had never done anything, thus he had no right to speak up about this. At the very least, Uncle Blake was deserving of his current position. But Dean only obtained his job as a kind of charity because Uncle Blake didn't want him to leave the company and work somewhere else because it was a family business. Then I went on to tell him exactly what Uncle Blake had said when he told me he was offering Dean the post of CEO since he had begged for it and would not accept anything less. In my original post, I indicated that my uncle told me that the only reason he was offering this position to Dean rather than me was because his son wanted it. And, while knowing that I deserved it more, he wanted to please his son. He also stated that Dean would merely be the nominal leader, while I would actually manage the show. I remembered it clearly, and I told Dean so he knew where he stood with his father. And suddenly there was silence. I heard them bickering softly, and then I heard footsteps as they walked away and drove out of the driveway. So my task was finished. Now the two of them could fight, but at least they'd leave me alone. The next day, I awoke to find that both of them had blocked me, which made me extremely happy. Anyway, things are going better now. I'm sure whatever is going on right now would have made my father very furious, but at least I know it's not my fault. Uncle Blake grew greedy and kicked me out, thus he is to blame for the issue. I'm extremely clear about it now, so no one can try to guilt trip me into doubting myself again. My mother is the one person I still have hope for. I truly hope she comes around eventually, since she and I have always had a terrific relationship, and after my father died, we were even closer. I absolutely miss her every day, and I keep hoping that she will text me someday. But so far, I've had no such luck. At least she hasn't blocked me yet, so perhaps she is keeping the door open. I might contact her if I start missing her too much. But for the time being, I'm still not sure what to do. Update 4. Hello everyone, it's been about 6 months since my previous update, and a lot has changed. For starters, Uncle Blake has officially retired and Dean has taken over the business. So far, he's basically keeping the status quo and doing nothing different. Maybe things may work out for them after all, but it doesn't matter to me. Since then, many former employees have migrated to us, which makes me extremely glad because I get to see a lot of familiar people at my new workplace. My mother and I have yet to speak, but I think I may have figured out why. A few weeks back, I was having dinner and drinks with Uncle George and his wife. After a while, my aunt left the room to relax, and while we were chatting, I finally questioned him. Because I was now very grown up and we were working together, I felt like I really needed to know what had transpired between him and the family that had resulted in him being cut off. He finally told me. Years ago, my mother attempted to initiate an affair with him. She invited him to help her in the kitchen on the day of Thanksgiving dinner, which was hosted at our place. He followed her, having no notion what would happen. But once they were alone in the kitchen, she informed him she wanted to take things a step further with him, and despite being married to my father, her gaze was always drawn to him. He tried to move away from her, but just in time, my father entered the kitchen and spotted the two of them standing so close. My mother freaked out and accused him of attempting to start anything with her. I don't remember this because Dean and I were in our respective rooms. But my father lost his passion and booted him out of the house that day. Later, they informed me that Uncle George had to depart because he had an emergency at work. However, following that day, my mother made up a slew of other stories to cover up the incident so that no one would believe him, including telling Uncle Blake and my father that he had planned to take money from the corporation and establish his own business. My father and Uncle Blake confronted him about this later, telling him that if he would not move aside on his own, they would ruin his life. So he decided to leave the corporation and launch his own business. Since then, he has had no contact with his family. After learning about all of this, I thought it was best for me to follow in his footsteps and avoid my family as well. It was heartbreaking to learn about my mother, but it is what it is. I accepted the facts, and this is now my life. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode.